Surprises continue as the spring goes on. Dylan Addae-Wusu has announced his transfer to Seton Hall from St. John's. And the softball team continues to make history as they've been lighting up this Big East Conference. The Hall has won 12 straight Big East matchups, and these players continue to rack up awards at a pace that feels like every other week. With the reemergence of Kelsey Carr and the bats continuing to stay hot, there is no telling how far this team can go. The baseball team is also starting to hit their stride as well. The squad is 4 games over 500, and they are right there in the Big East race. The Hall is now on a 3-game win streak and travels to Xavier next up. How big of a win is Addae-Wusu's transfer for Coach Holloway? Will the softball team bring home their first Big East championship since 2005? And how will this baseball team end up in terms of their own Big East tournament hopes? All this and more. I'm John Makuch, and this is Hall Talk. Hello and welcome back to Hall Talk. I'm John Makuch, joined alongside Joe Matthews. And before we get talking about basketball, softball, baseball, everything, Joe, how we doing?
John, I'm doing great today. Great to be here on Hall Talk to talk some Pirate sports. We've had a lot of exciting things happening in the Seton Hall world, in the athletics realm, and there's a lot to digest, a lot to break down, and there's no one I'd rather be doing it than you, John.
It's always a good time, always a good time. But the big news, as we heard about, I guess, 30 minutes ago here in the studios of Pirate Television, Dylan Addae-Wusu transfers from St. John's to Seton Hall. The 6'4" senior guard is going to come over, make an impact at Seton Hall. What do you think, Joe? I mean, this is a big transfer for Seton Hall. I mean, how big of a win is this for Coach Holloway, who, kind of struggled to find these transfers? You saw a lot of other Big East teams pick up some transfers, and now Seton Hall kind of adds their name to that list of Big East teams as getting a lot of big impact players. Well,
it's definitely huge for Coach Holloway, especially because, you mentioned that, these Big East teams, they were getting some transfers, they were getting some players on their team. It's even more important that the Pirates are landing intra-conference transfers, right? That's a thing that's pretty rare, especially in the Big East and college basketball in general, to transfer within your own conference. But, with NIL and, with the heightened amount of players in the transfer portal that started to pick up. But for the Pirates to be able to go and poach a player from a conference rival like Dylan Addae-Wusu coming over from Queens down to Seton Hall, that's absolutely huge. He's a fantastic player as well, averaged a little more than 9 points per game last year for Mike Anderson's squad at St. John's, was a reliable three-point shooter, can space the floor a little bit, play some good defense. He's going to be a really good rotational piece for Coach Holloway. But the bigger thing, too, for me at least, is this is the start, right? You mentioned it, John. Seton Hall, they had been a little quiet on the transfer portal front, right? The only players they really added this offseason were David Tubeck and Isaiah Watts, who were, two freshmen who were coming in. We haven't really seen them on, the college landscape before. But now you're bringing in a transfer, someone who can be a reliable impact player, and he's someone who can possibly recruit some more players because there's other St. John's players in the portal like Posh Alexander, who Seton Hall's had interest in.
I mean, that's big right there. Posh Alexander is a player that maybe could end up coming around to Seton Hall if he's able to, want to play with Dylan Addae-Wusu. We'll see what happens with all that. It's going to be a very interesting Seton Hall team. I mean, Joe, what do you expect Dylan Addae-Wusu's impact to be with Seton Hall? I mean, you could see him in the starting lineup potentially. You could see him as a bench rotation piece. There's a lot of ways that you can go with a player like this. And obviously the transfer portal is absolutely massive. And this probably isn't the last transfer that Shaheen Holloway is going to get. Also, big note from Rick Pitino to Shaheen Holloway. That was the decision made by Dylan Addae-Wusu. So that's big for Shaheen Holloway and his own brand and his own ability to make things happen, Joe.
It absolutely is, because, Rick Pitino, he was the big talk of, this kind of offseason cycle for the Big East that, St. John's went out and brought in a Hall of Fame basketball coach who's won national titles, who's coached at schools like Kentucky, like Louisville. He's coming over to the Big East now, and he's drawing in all these names and he's drawing in all this publicity, and he's saying that, St. John's, they're going to play at MSG every single game, and they're going to be, the big spot for basketball in the Big East. For Shaheen Holloway to take a player from his squad, to take a player that could easily be playing for Rick Pitino and bring him over to the South Orange, That is absolutely huge. And going back, John, to talking about maybe his on-the-court impact and what he can mean for this team, he brings a lot to the table. Like I mentioned a little earlier, he's a reliable three-point shooter. That's something that the Pirates had some trouble with throughout the season. They were a decent three-point shooting team at times, but keyword at times, they were a little streaky in that regard. Addae-Wusu can provide a lot of stability in terms of spacing the floor, shooting the three ball, and he also is a pretty versatile defender. He can play a little positionless on the defensive end. Guard some bigger players. Even though he's only 6'4", he plays a little bigger than his true size. So I think he's going to be a player that maybe isn't going to be a starting lineup player every single night out for Coach Holloway, but he can come off the bench and provide a spark. He can slot in a couple of different spots in the starting lineup if Coach needs him. He's just going to be another one of those jack of all trades players, which it seems like we're starting to see is Shaheen Holloway's brand. Guys who can play positionless basketball, guys who can shoot the ball, space the floor, drive inside, play defense, kind of do a little bit of everything. That's exactly who Dylan Addae-Wusu is, and so I think he fits the Shaheen Holloway mold perfectly, and I think Coach Shah is going to be able to do some really good things with him on the offensive and defensive end.
And the Pirates, they lost a player like Femi Odakale, who was kind of that player in terms of just a pure defender who could really make things happen, could shoot the three ball every now and then. Now with Addae-Wusu, who's a better three-point shooter, they maybe kind of replace that aspect. But that's enough for men's basketball for now. We're going to move on to this softball squad who, as you know, if you're a loyal Hall Talk watcher, this softball team has been absolutely lighting it up throughout this whole year. And, they're over 35 wins at this point, 34 wins. And they've really just been awesome to watch on campus and just following them. And the pitching has made a huge difference. The bats have been the bats. 12 straight Big East wins. They are showing that they are a true competitor in this Big East Conference and have continued to show that throughout the season, Joe. What limit? I mean, there is no limit, but how is this Seton Hall team going to fare as, you kind of get towards the end of the season? They got a big series against Villanova. They're looking to really solidify their spot in the Big East Conference and maybe even get a bye.
No, yeah, they're putting themselves in position to do just that. And, these final couple of series towards the end of the year, it's going to be very telling for, what they can do. Because now the pressure's on. The Pirates, they've already clinched a spot in the Big East Tournament, right? So they don't have so much pressure. They can, maybe relax, take it easy. They don't have to worry about winning every game, but seeding still matters. And the teams that they're playing, those games matter for them as well, because these other teams like Villanova and some of these other Big East Conference teams, they need to try and clinch a spot in the Big East Tournament. So intensity is going to be at a huge, huge high throughout these final couple of series for Seton Hall. And so if they can keep the intensity up, if they can keep stringing together wins, playing their own brand of softball, they are A, going to be able to ride that adversity well and stay hot into the tournament, and B, they like you said, John, they really have no limit to what they can do because they've been so phenomenal this season. We've seen how hot they've been. We've seen how well some of these pieces on the team have played. If they keep stringing together wins, if they keep staying hot into Big East play, I mean, they can just continue what they were already doing in the regular season, which was dominating Big East competition. This is a team that has a real chance to be Big East tournament champions, to potentially go even further, make the NCAA tournament. They have some real high chances as we get into the final stages of the season. But like I said, it all comes down to these final couple of series because they've got to keep their foot on the gas pedal, right? You can't ease up just because you clinch. You can't take a load back, take an easy couple of weeks and say, hey, we clinch, we'll worry about turning up the intensity then. No, they have to keep that intensity on because, like I said, if they stay hot, they're going to do big things come tournament time.
They don't want to stop at, just making it, getting in. This 12 straight, it's not enough for the Seton Hall team. They want to have a good position in stores. They want to make an impact early in that Big East tournament once they get in. But they're in. And now they got to fight their way to stay in and stay in that spot there in the Big East tournament, in the Big East standings. Again, they've made it. They've made it to their spot, but they've got to keep their foot on the gas. But we'll see if they can do that. We'll see if they can get it done. Another team that needs to keep their foot on the gas, though, this baseball team for Seton Hall. They're about 4 wins over 500. They've been, they've had their moments where they've been streaky. They've had all that. But they've picked up a couple good wins. They picked up a number of good wins. They just got a win over Lafayette, and they were able to salvage a series against Butler. But they've got a lot of tough C's ahead of them. They are on a 3-game win streak, though. They had 2 non-conference games. But it's going to be tough days ahead. They've got Xavier coming up. They've got UConn coming up and on the road. So it's not going to be an easy road for Seton Hall. How do they kind of come over that, and where do you see them kind of getting through in the Big East Conference?
Well, I think in terms of how they get over that, they've got to approach it with the same mentality that the softball team is going to have to approach their end of the season with, and that's keep your foot on the gas, right? The baseball team, they've been pretty phenomenal in terms of out-of-conference play and, picking up some of those wins against, Lafayette, going on the road and, beating some out-of-conference teams. But, it's been the conference play that, is a little trickier, right? Because the Big East is a great baseball conference. And the Pirates have done well. They've, held their own. They've put themselves in that position to get into the Big East tournament potentially. But like you mentioned, John, they're going to be going on the road to, some Big East teams. They're going to be facing some real premier programs in not just the Big East, but in the nation, right? Because you've got teams like UConn in the Big East who are ranked number 10 in the nation right now. So you have got to keep that intensity up. You've got to pick up a couple of those Big East wins. So that's going to be really, really key for them because they are in that position, right? They're just on the verge. They can, find a way to clinch themselves a spot in the tournament, and then obviously tournament play, anything can happen. But it starts with those Big East wins because there haven't been a ton for the Seton Hall Pirate team, but they can do it. They have the talent to do it. They have the hitting and the pitching to, compete against some of these better teams in conference. And if they can, really make things tough for them, they can come out on top of a lot of those games and really put themselves in a solid spot to have a cushion for the Big East tournament.
The Seton Hall Pirates, they are in position to be in position. They just have to capitalize on the opportunity they have in the next few games. It's not going to be easy for the Seton Hall team. We all know that. I mean, when you play, again, you said number 10 team in the country on the road. It's never going to be easy. But they've shown that they have beaten a team like North Carolina on the road early in the year. They got a game against them, a top team in the nation at the time. So the Pirates have shown that they could beat good teams. They've shown that they can get it done. It's been about consistency. And, Stosh Pokrovsky had a home run yesterday, and you had Oscar Murray hitting a big home run as well. So this team's got a lot of pop. They can get a lot of extra base hits. They can make things happen. Just takes one swing of the bat sometimes for the Seton Hall baseball team. But we'll see how far they go in this Big East tournament. We'll see how far, if they get in as well. They have to fight their way in. But it's a Big East conference. Anything can happen. And Seton Hall, they're always there. They're never gone. They always find a way to stick around. And now we're going to move on to our final topic of the day. We're going to talk about women's basketball. They got into this 3x3 tournament for USA Basketball. They're going to make an impact there. It's a nice, fun tournament for them to be in. Good representation for Seton Hall. You've got Amari Wright. You've got Case Satterfield. You've got Shea Higgins in there as well. And, it's going to be a fun tournament for this team. 3x3 Nationals. It's going to start May 5th. In 2023. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on this for USA Basketball to see the Pirates in there? Also, some other teams are in this as well. It's a big tournament that, players get to play in every year, every now and then. So, it's going to be fun. Zana Baines in that as well. So, it's going to be a fun tournament, Joe.
It's absolutely going to be fun. And, it's really good to see Seton Hall get that kind of national limelight that, they didn't really have too much throughout, the regular season, right? You had Lauren Park Lane getting a lot of accolades, getting a lot of attention in terms of the national media, but Seton Hall women's basketball didn't really get the spotlight it deserved. And, they deserve that spotlight. They were a absolutely phenomenal team, just a great basketball program. Coach Tony Bozzella has done wonders here in South Orange for that team, put them, in contention in the Big East every single season. They are such a great team. They deserve more coverage. And, going out to Colorado and, playing in that 3v3 tournament, it's going to be really cool because there's other pretty premier programs out there, some other Big East schools, but, just other good, noteworthy women's basketball programs are going to be out there competing in that 3v3 tournament. And, they're going to be sending those players out there, like Case Satterfield, like Shea Higgins, like Baines, who, they aren't the Lauren Park Lanes of, Seton Hall, right? So they're not the teams that when they get on a national broadcast, they're not putting together packages about Azana Baines because all the attention's on Lauren Park Lane. Well, now these players, they're going to be the ones to be able to get in the spotlight, show off their skills because they are all phenomenally talented players. I mean, Azana Baines was spectacular this season when she got the chance to really, get some room to run. I mean, she had some 20-point performances, some double-doubles. Case Satterfield has been a sharpshooter for Seton Hall. Even going back to her Xavier days, she's been a prolific scorer. Amari Wright is someone who, going forward, is going to have the potential to, take up that spotlight and become a star for the team as, she probably slots into that starting point guard role next year in place of Lauren Park Lane transferring out. And then Shea Higgins. She was someone who Seton Hall fans knew was a talented scorer, a talented guard. But, the rest of the nation might not be too aware of that. So now all those players, they get the chance to show off their skills out, playing for USA Basketball in a 3v3 tournament. And, it's a different kind of basketball, too. It's going to be fun. Oh, excuse me. It's going to be fun for them to adjust to that, see how they gel together there. It's going to be a really, really fun thing, and I'm excited to see, that team and that group of players get out there and see what they do.
Mississippi State will also be there at that tournament. However, no Lauren Park Lane. playing for Mississippi State there, unfortunately. So no, Seton Hall and Seton Hall action there. But it's going to be a fun tournament. It's great to see Seton Hall get this national attention, be able to play for your country as well. Just have a good time. Good old tournaments. We love good tournaments. But that will do it from us here at Hall Talk. I've been John Makuch, joined alongside Joe Matthews here. We talked about some basketball, baseball, softball. Always a great time. And thank you so much for tuning in and watching here on Hall Talk. Once again, I'm John Makuch alongside Joe Matthews. Thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure. But that'll be Hall Talk. We'll see you another time.